Or the agenda? Or approval of agenda?
So moved, Bjorn.
Thank you, BJ. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Samantha. You don't ever want to be called Samantha, right? That's what comes up on the screen.
Oh, I don't mind either. Samantha or Sam is just fine with me. Thank you for asking.
Okay, is there any discussion on the question? Seeing nothing, please raise your hand to signify your approval. Okay, and if anybody is voting no, please raise your hand now. And if you're abstaining, if you could say something, because I think would be a little difficult. Okay, approval of agenda. We are now going to look at the minutes of March 3rd. If I could have a motion, please.
So moved, Bjorn.
Thank you. Second?
Lenny will second.
Thank you, Len. Is there any corrections or discussion of the minutes? Additions? Okay, seeing none, would you raise your hand, please, when if you approve of the current version of the minutes? Okay, thank you. If you disapprove, please raise your hand. Nope. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We have public input and announcements, and I did want to say, I guess right off, well, I was going to turn this over to Dave to explain why we're all on Google Meets and have a couple of other things, and then we'll go to the public.
Yeah, you bet, Adrian. Thank you. First, just as a matter of protocol, a request for folks who are viewing tonight, thanks for finding us through the Google Meet platform. As you can imagine, as Adrian is trying to keep track of who's voting in favor, et cetera, looking at a lot of faces makes that challenging. So my request would be, if you're willing to mute your video, that way Adrian's only looking at the faces of the staff members and the board members so that she can keep track of that. But of course, if any of you are here for public input, which we do have 5 people signed up, of course, unmuting your video at that point makes perfect sense. So 2 actually really exciting things to share, one of which has to do with why we are meeting the way we are tonight. But the first is I'd like to offer congratulations on behalf of the school district, on behalf of our administration, and want to recognize our very own Jennifer McLemore, who is here with us tonight. For those of you that don't know, Jen is our assistant principal at Mill River, and on Monday evening was named by the Proctor School Board as the next principal at Proctor High School. And we are really, really excited for Jen in that regard. I do want to say, you know, in our field, sometimes people try to hold on to people as much as they can, right? You get good people and you try to keep them and not let them get away. And that has never been our mindset and our approach. We've always believed in contributing to the field by developing leaders and preparing them to go do what they are wired to go and do. So we're sad to be losing Jen. We're excited she has to stick with us until the end of June, but we're really excited about what she's got ahead of her in a role as a principal. She's going to do a fantastic job. So once again, Jen, we appreciate you. Also, I want to share some really exciting news. Our very own Brian Hill, who's our assistant superintendent, he and his wife had their second baby daughter in the middle of the night last night. And so while that was expected, the timing was completely unknown. For those of you that know how things work behind the scenes, Brian is our lead in our technology systems. I know that BJ understands that world because BJ lives in that world, but BJ also understands that the process of converting a Google Meet into a YouTube live stream is not a simple process by any means, and it certainly involves brains beyond what I possess. And but Brian is able to manage that and handle it. However, under the circumstances, when you have a newborn baby, setting up a YouTube live stream is not on the list of items to attend to. So I want to encourage the group who's with us tonight. Please keep in mind that our obligations are to make sure that board meetings are open and accessible, and that is what this meeting in fact is. Our obligations also in this COVID context are to record those meetings and make the recordings available. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. But I do want to stress that the YouTube live stream model that we've used as an additional benefit is an extra step that we've taken and not a requirement or a mandate or an expectation. So it's important that we understand that we're all here at a publicly open meeting and we're able to gather in this format. And there's a good possibility, because Brian plans to be out with his wife and baby for a couple weeks, good possibility we may do this again at our first meeting in April. Those details will settle out and sugar off in the coming days. So with that, Adrian, I know that we have 5 folks who have signed up for public comment. They are in order: Christine Billings, Gail Gillum, Todd Fillmore, Arn Majorel, and Tammy Heffernan. And I believe each has indicated that they are available to speak by video. So up first, we have Christine Billings.
Welcome, Christine. I hope you've read the public comment instructions. I believe, we only have 5 people, so 3 minutes is fine. And we'll keep track of that for you. Try and interrupt you a little bit ahead of time. But go ahead.
Okay, hi. Basically, I'll just read a letter and not do all the good things. On March 3rd, 2012, the school board was made aware of Ms. Raymond's front porch forum posting that was posted the day before town elections. The posting contained libelous nature items against 5 school board candidates and requested any questions to be directly, personally to her. This act may have affected the election results. Furthermore, the posting and statements provided no proof, whereas the statements she was vilifying are backed by email proof and citation of a number of laws. We respectfully ask the following: to hear a reply that delves deeper into the following as well. The process of selecting a board chair. Number 2, please explain how the board determined and voted Ms. Raymond as the board chairperson position without the public hearing A, the earlier referenced situation and the feelings of the board on that. B, why she may or may not be the best person for the job, even though she's been there for a very long time. C, of why other board members may or may not be a better selection for this position. Number 3, if she is proven guilty of libelous conduct via public apology and/or litigation, how will the board justify A, remaining her at the helm of the board chairperson, B, her remaining on the board as a transparent, contributing, and effective board member? In the past, we have been taken aback by the board's lack of real response and dialogue. Everything appears under the guise of legal rights for non-disclosure or executive session. After speaking with a few lawyers in the past, when we were visiting you guys a couple years ago, they stated that these were public issues and that it is the choice of the board not to disclose the information. We intend to continue on with the blessing of our homeschool journey, but mind you, we are still taxpayers and we're concerned for the school district and quality of non-political education provided to the next generation. And that is all I have. Thank you for letting me speak. I will submit my letter via email, and I know it's a written response.
Thank you, Christine.
Adrian, up next you have Gail Gillum by video, followed by Todd Fillmore, Arn Majorel, and Tammy Heffernan.
Hi, I clicking the video, it's not making, I just have me, the circle. I don't know why. I think,
We can hear you, Gail. So I'm not sure either, but please.
okay, well, I think you're in charge of me being seen. So, and it's funny that my first thing is about Google Meet and making sure that we get to see your faces at these meetings instead of hiding behind the circle that I'm behind right now, which is kind of funny. My next concern is, has to do with John McKenna. I don't believe as a taxpayer in town of Clarendon that he should be considered based on comments written in an email to a taxpayer in town. And it was taken to the Clarendon Select Board. I guess he sent a letter to be appointed to fill this void that we have now with George being gone. And in his email, he called pretty much 2/3 of the town of Clarendon voters racist and homophobes. And I don't think that someone doing that should be considered as a seat on the board again. The town of Clarendon voted for a new person, and I don't think he should be allowed back in as a sitting member of the school board. Number 3, if I have time, last week or the last board meeting, I talked about school ranking and that I wanted Mill River to do its best to get our ranking back up to single digits instead of double. And I was really surprised that Mr. Younts had some sort of a rebuttal to me because I was under the assumption that when we come to a school board meeting, that it's just a one-way street and there's no interaction back and forth. I'm not saying that I didn't like that. That's fine, but is that going to be the new policy, or was that just like a happenstance that happened? And that's all I have. Appreciate my time. Thank you.
Okay. Gail, if I could just make 2 comments. I'm not changing the policy of answering questions as we go along. John McKenna has withdrawn his name. I thought that was a reasonable thing to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yep, no problem.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, you bet. And hey, Gail, just to bring up the concern you expressed about video access, I just want the viewers with us tonight to know that I'm responsible for managing the meeting. And as I look at the names that are present, there are 2 things I have control of. I can mute people and I can remove people from the meeting, but I don't have any access to video control. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what the scenario is that's preventing the video from coming up.
Maybe that was something I clicked. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. Thank you.
I am going to add something while we're on that subject, if you guys don't mind, as a tech guy. Google Meets did make an update in the past few months that if you have a slower internet connection, it will automatically turn off the video. So if you're seeing that video is turning on and off, there's a chance that it's because Google Meets is trying to allow you to stay on audio and hear what's going on. So there is that little extra thing that may be happening with video.
Thank you, Vijay. That's very interesting. Okay, our next speaker.
Adrian, we have Todd Fillmore, followed by Arn Majorel and Tammy Heffernan.
Okay, Todd, you have your 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to make some comments. And thank you to Dave Younts for explaining the details behind the change tonight. And with that in mind, I kind of owe you folks an apology. There were certain suspicions that were discussed through email. Unfortunately, there is a great deal of suspicion flowing about, and it has a lot to do with certain acts in the past which don't bear up under close scrutiny relative to transparency and open meeting laws. With those thoughts in mind, I would like to share some thoughts. Recently, comparisons to national politics have been invoked regarding allegations of misdeeds by members of the Mill River School Board. I recall the repeated refrain from the recent impeachment managers against the president that, quote, "no one is above the law." I agree with that with every fiber of my being. I would now like to read a list to you folks who are listening. 1 VSA 310, 1 VSA 311, 1 VSA 312, 1 VSA 313, 16 VSA 264, 16 VSA 563, 16 VSA 1623, 20 USC 1232H, Mill River Policy B3, Mill River Policy E4, Chapter 1, Article 7 of the Vermont Constitution, Chapter 1, Article 13 of the Vermont Constitution, and Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act. Since last June, I've personally witnessed various members of the Mill River Board and Superintendent variously violate, ignore, or abuse these laws, those very laws that I just cited. Policies and civil rights in their deliberations and interactions with parents, voters, and students. Some board members have even accused hundreds of neighbors of being racists, homophobes, white supremacists, and even called them dicks, while making racist comments amongst themselves that, quote, "we white people are the problem," end quote. All of this is verified in the public record, and none of my claims along these lines have been publicly refuted. Despite these breaches of public trust, Adrian Raymond recently made false public accusations of a libelous nature against 5 candidates for school board in an effort to damage their reputations and sway 4 town local elections. She may be the subject of litigation for her conduct. Shockingly, Adrian was elected board chair by many of these same individuals with no discussion of these known facts, none whatsoever. 2 of Adrian's victims are now board members in evidence tonight, at least one. No one is above the law. Keep that in mind, folks. Those words echo in my mind. As you evaluate the conduct of board chair Adrian Raymond later this evening, I ask the board today, do you share my emphatic belief in that ethic? Or do you feel that you too are above the law, or that Adrian is above the law? I fully believe that I represent the voice of hundreds of residents in respectfully demanding that Adrian Raymond step down as board chair until this matter is resolved through a full board inquiry and the Court of Public Appeal.
Try and finish up.
Thank you very much. That's all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Adrian, we have Arn Majorel next, followed by Tammy Heffernan.
Arna, would you like to start? Arna? Oh, okay. Go ahead. I think you're muted. Nope. Dave, can you see if he's muted or?
Yes, it appears Arn is muted, but I don't have the ability to unmute. I can only mute. I apologize. I can't do anything with that.
Okay.
There you are.
I hear you now.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to talk about is, I think, what was already being addressed. So this is about what was put on Front Porch Forum by Adrian Raymond. So you said our communities are being subjected to a coordinated campaign to change entire direction of our schools in every one of our four member towns. And so I read that and I'm thinking, well, isn't this what you people have been doing for the last year or 2 or more? You've been a coordinated effort to change the direction of the school. You also said sinking to a baseness that is sad and hurtful. It is very disappointing that rather than run an honest and transparent campaign, they have taken the low road to smear good people. And again, I just want to remind everybody, you specifically called out my name in this letter as I was one of these people. So I just want to say, I believe I ran an honest campaign. If I said something that was not honest, can you specifically tell me what that was? I was also transparent. I would like to ask you, are you transparent? Would you be transparent with the curriculum that you guys are developing and trying to push into the school? You also mentioned smearing, that I smeared good people. Okay, I would like to know, what did I say and who did I smear? You specifically named me as somebody that did that. And I'd also like to remind you that I lost by 6 votes, and you put this out sometime just before the election. Then you talked about widely distributing a letter. I did not distribute any letter. I distributed it to no one, but you said that I did. And then you said that we're being subjected to tactics similar to what is occurring at a national level. And I think this is really where it just struck me, is that's the problem, is that you people think this is all about politics. And it is all about politics to you. It's about pushing your very left ideology into the school and onto the kids, which in my opinion is very inappropriate. And I just wish we would get back to fundamental good education in the schools. I have 4 kids that would be in the schools if it wasn't for the shenanigans going on. I'm just so disappointed. I hope that you really consider the things that were said here tonight.
Arna, are you, your 3 minutes?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Final public comment is Tammy Heffernan, also by video.
Hi, everybody. It's weird to be on this side of the screen, but I just wanted to pop in and to first of all congratulate all the new board members. I wish you well, and I hope that you have as much of a good time on the board and do as much good as you can. And know that I wish you well. But my main purpose for being here this evening is I was very sad to hear that George Ambrose is leaving the board or has left the board. And I wanted to congratulate him and recognize him for the work that he did for the Mill River Board and for the other school boards prior to our Unified Union District Board. And I think that it was important to do that publicly, and I couldn't think of a better forum to do it in than in this meeting. So I just wanted to say that in my opinion, George was a wonderful board member. He was the quintessential board member. He always had a nice thing to say to everyone, students, board members, faculty, staff. I know walking into board meetings with George, if he saw anybody, he always had something nice to say to them. He was always even-handed. He was always fair. He always listened to everyone. He disagreed with us. He agreed with us, but he was always respectful to each of us and to the community and to the students. And he had wonderful facilitation skills and always brought us around when we needed to. And most of all, I guess, it was his favorite part of the meeting, the Transact Other Legal Business, for which I think should be renamed the George Ambrose portion of the meeting. And he always had a wonderful ability to make us recognize that we could do our work, do it well, and still have fun by his wonderful little jokes and puns that he would throw our way. So I just want to publicly wish him well in his retirement from the board, and wish you all well in work, and just good luck to all of you. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy.
Take care.
I'd also like to add, even though I'm not a member of the public, my congratulations to George that he retired again from his many, many careers, and how much we appreciated his work for the board through the years, and how much I personally appreciated him. He was a wonderful board member. Dave, did you want to, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I could just pile on the George Ambrose train.
Go ahead.
Grateful for George. George is a person who I respect and admire greatly. 7 years in this role for me, and I learned early on that George was in addition to being a doctor, having his doctorate degree, which he didn't like to speak very much about. I jokingly called him Dr. Ambrose one day, and he said, yeah, that's actually true. I have that, but then it never came up again. He's a former school administrator and a former educator, so he always had a lens on how to look at the work that goes on in schools and in a school district, and was always able to provide insight, perspective, mentoring, and just a gentle hand and a firm word sometimes when necessary. I think we can all agree that George's puns were the worst, but they also were the best. And many of us enjoyed trying to beat him to the punch on occasion, which he took great pleasure in. And George is still with us. I feel like we're he's not here, but I just need to say publicly that my time with all of our board members, I appreciate and value. And people like George, who've been at it for a long time, deserve our respect and appreciation. He has represented Clarendon and the 4 communities of our district incredibly well. So just really grateful for him. Thanks for letting me say that, Adrian.
Yeah, I ditto to all of it. I don't know if anybody else wanted, I don't want to cut anybody short if there was any other comments, but other than that, if I don't see any hands, we will go to principal updates. And since I was not let to given any slack at all, Fred, would you like to start? Fred.
I would love to, yes.
Okay. Your picture is frozen, so I was like, he's not even paying attention. Go ahead.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
First, welcome to the new board members, and thank you for the work that you're about to put in for a while. It's sometimes not easy, but very much appreciated, so thank you for that. We just ended our second trimester. The time flew by. and our parent-teacher conferences are scheduled for this week and our full day on Friday. We're excited about our Clarendon Community Complex. There are a few very key players, parents and friends that are a part of that. But I just walked the field with Joe Casella and his project manager, and they're going to come in as soon as they can access the field and mold a soccer field for us and put in a baseball diamond, softball diamond kind of thing. So that's really cool. We have some kids engaged in the design work in the garden. We're teaming up with our after-school folks. They're going to start seeds for beds, flowers in the Peace Garden. And one cool thing is, we've got a mini grow lab that they're working with inside and helping all the other primary kids learn how that goes. And we have the Year of the Book, our Cliff Grant. It's the Children's Literacy Foundation. Not only provided books for the children, our classroom libraries, but also our Clarendon Public Library. It has provided money for the classroom teachers. Our pre-K team has purchased manipulatives for improved literacy instruction, like magnet letters and boards for our youngest learners. And although we have not been able to take advantage of the school-wide presentations that they do so well because of COVID, there's been many, many benefits to our kids and teachers alike. And lastly, I'd like to congratulate Joe Bertoloni, who has been selected by his peers, nominated by his peers, and selected as Teacher of the Year for our elementary school. So congratulations to Joe. And that's all I have. Unless you have some questions, I'd be happy to fill in any blanks.
Seeing no hands. Maureen, are you? I don't see your, oh, excuse me, Doug does have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, how'd your birthday go, Fred?
It went well. It was extremely filled with cookies and smiles, and I enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you very much, Doug.
Yeah, mine's up in a couple of weeks on the 2nd, and it'll be nice to have some cake and ice cream and just sit on the porch, and hopefully the sun will be out.
Absolutely. I probably have some leftover cookies for you.
Yeah, I'll check you up on it. Thank you.
Okay. Jody, do you want to go next?
Oh, okay.
Or Maureen? I mean, it doesn't matter.
I'm here.
Okay, Maureen.
Okay, so TMS teachers are working hard to address the children's academic needs. These were exacerbated by the COVID remote learning last spring. The teachers are focused on providing struggling readers with double doses of guided reading and guided math. We've also been focusing on recognizing stereotypes and thinking critically about the impact that media has on our assumptions. Additionally, we also received a grant during town meeting from the Timoth Community Fund for working within the community to build compost bins or worm farms. I know that's exciting to everyone, worm farm. And we've received our updated climbing equipment, and we're ready to roll next year using the climbing wall. It's been out of commission for for as long as I've been there, for 7 years. That's in the community center. We also were able to purchase not only the snowshoes for the 1 or 2 classes that we requested, but we found such a good deal. We have snowshoes for the entire school, and they were supposed to come this spring, but it's a little late. They're kind of out of stock, but we're ready for next year when we do our scat and track with the Fish and Wildlife. So the only thing else, and we're looking forward to the spring when we're going to be constructing our literacy trail with the community as well. The only other thing I want to add to that is that we are going to miss George, and thank you so much for all the work that he's done. So, and does anyone have any questions? No. Okay. Jody, you're on.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thanks, Maureen. So if you know a Shrewsbury kiddo, ask them if there were any leprechauns in the school today, because there were some pranks that little leprechauns did last night. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And also I want to welcome the new board members and say I wish that I could invite you to come visit our school in person, but because of COVID, we can't. But please reach out if there's any question, wonder, or anything that you ever want to know about the Mountain School. So we've been up to all kinds of fun. We have been doing a lot of great science lately. The pre-Kers practice being engineers and made some very cool inventions. We have been doing some heating and cooling experiments. Today, there were some experiments with creating rainbows. We've been going outside quite a bit, snowshoeing, lots of sledding, and Erin Closhim, our PE teacher, made this giant snow maze for Snow Maze Tag, which was an epically good time. I got my cardio playing with some kindergartners in that. Report cards just went out. As Fred said, we have parent-teacher conferences coming. Something that's been really exciting lately is a Shrewsbury community member saw how hard our kids were working during this pandemic and brought us a really cool special gift of 2 big chainsaw carved bears about as big as our kiddos. And as soon as the ground is hard enough, those 2 bears are going to go right up on the hill overlooking the mountain school, right where the kids play pretend, and they'll be a really amazing addition to our school. Lastly, I want to mention that this week, through support from our coaches from our Farm to School grant, we'll be sending out requests for local farms who would like to partner with our cafeteria next year. And so that's a really exciting goal we've been working on to see if we can support our local community and our local growers during this time. So if you know a local grower that wants to sell to the cafeteria, let me know, and I will be sending it out in my weekly this week. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Guess I don't see anything. Dan? Last but best, maybe?
I would not ever dare take that away from Tyler.
Oh, this is true. I was thinking of the elementary schools. Sorry.
Okay. Well, good evening. Welcome, new board members. And if they're out there, farewell, the past board members. We appreciate all of your service to our students. So I want to congratulate you who are now a part of the board, and I look forward to working with you. But I also want to give a major congratulations and shout out to our very own Para Employee of the Year, Mrs. Jane Campbell. Woo! I love everyone on our staff, but when I saw Jane's name came up, I was in full agreement. She's one that I've had many personal conversations with, and it just flows out of her mouth, the love that she has, the care that she has, and the concern that she has for our kids, not only their well-being, but also their academic support. And so I think it's a good example and testament that she shows just through her actions. So she's one of the first people at the site every day. She beats me there because she's part of the early care program. So even before 7 o'clock and I show up, we wave at each other as she's at the far end of the hall in the library and I'm coming through the entrance. And so I look forward to that wave. And then she bounces around throughout the day supporting any grade level that has the needs. And she's very well versed and experienced to do that. And then she's hanging out after school's dismissed and supporting our after school tutoring program. So a not only phenomenal employee, but a phenomenal human being. So thank you, Jane, for your service. And we love and appreciate everything that you do. Our school has been focusing on just our school-wide expectations of being respectful and accepting responsibility, practicing responsibility and being safe and working together. And one of the things that we've done is we've put together these half slips that are positive pause that recognize students who are meeting these expectations and doing random acts of kindness. And when they get these positive pause, they go around and they have a couple other staff members sign it to acknowledge it. So there's a little mini celebration there. And then they come up and drop them off in the basket in the front office. And there's a little bell that they ring. And we have a mini dance party for each person that rings that bell. And then I've been giving them a shout out during morning announcements, just blowing through the list because there's a lot each day. And if I explained every reason why each person had earned it, the morning announcements would already be longer than they already are. And I don't think anyone wants that. But it's just important to recognize how well our students are doing. And sometimes we lose sight of that because one negative thing will take all of our attention away from the 10 positive things. And so I want to recognize our students for all their hard work that they've been doing. We recently met with our continuous improvement plan team. So that consisted of board member, parents, teachers, paras, and even one of our very own students. And I will say that we were proud of the input that the student shared. It's always refreshing and sometimes an eye-opener to get the student's perspective. So they probably addressed the meeting more professionally than I did because I tend to like to have fun sometimes. But she just did a really good job. So we thank her for that, and thank you for the team for dedicating some of your time to help look at some of the data for our school to help us identify some areas for focusing on moving forward. One of those areas that we noticed in between math and English is that though we made growth in both areas, we did not make as much growth in math. And there were various answers of why that could possibly be, but that is one area that our staff is now looking into focusing deeper on and comparing the results from fall to winter and what specific areas in math is it that we really need to hone in on so those students can gain those concepts and those learnings so they can transfer that as they move on to further concepts and the next grade level, as we are surprisingly nearing the end of this year. And I can't believe that we're saying that it's the middle of March. I did want to give a shout out to Gary Marcy. There has been a pond that grows, I guess, in the rain season into the winter season. It turns into an ice skating rink. And to be honest, I actually was thinking of putting borders around it and having our very own ice skating rink. And Gary, unfortunately, but fortunately, ruined my plan and actually located, there was a broken pipe underneath a tree. Yeah, I know, mud season's here. But there was a broken pipe under a tree, and these guys had to trench down. They had to take out a tree, and they were able to reconnect and pipe around. And almost instantly, this big water puddle dried up. And so I know that there has been a lot of staff making positive comments about that because it was quite atrocious. It was its own little biosphere of Vermont mud season, but 24/7, 365. So that now is the thing of the past, and it's a little more safe as students are walking through there. So thank you, Gary, for your attention to that. I will say that the positive pause these kids are earning are being connected like a chain along the walls through our hallways. And I made the announcement to students, which was based on a student request, actually. I asked them, what do you want to work for? And the kids love me so much that they want to throw pie at my face. And so as a glutton for punishment, I happily accepted that challenge. And for me, unfortunately, the chain is growing faster than I thought. So that pie season may be coming sooner than I thought. But it's just fun to kind of cheer on the kids and see the good work that they're doing. Any questions? Oh, and then happy birthday, Fred and Doug.
Excuse me. We're on to the high school. Tyler, it's your turn. Thank you, Dan.
Good evening. And again, as everyone else said, welcome to our new board members. Thank you for your service. It's It's a huge job and sometimes thankless. So thank you in advance. It's been a long time since we've talked with one another. It's been, feels like a month or so, but so I got some really cool things to talk about. Probably the coolest thing and that's happened in the last couple of weeks is music. Music's back inside. Our students, our teachers of it are extremely excited that we are able to now sing and play our band instruments inside. And the funny thing is our kids weathered, and I no pun intended, sorry, George, weathered so much in the fall and early winter of singing outside in single degree temperatures. Now they can go inside when it's nice and warm out. So, you know, we're being flexible, and now they're going outside because they want to, not because they have to. So moving on there to our own Jen McMorris, who I have to say congratulations to for the Proctor principalship. 2 weeks ago, she came up with a fun activity for all of our kids to do. It's a weekly Kahoot challenge. And if you're not familiar with Kahoot, it is a online gaming question and answer kind of trivia kind of thing. And essentially what we're doing is we're working through each discipline in the school, each content area by week. And the kids are competing in their classes to see who answers the most questions correctly. And I will say that the best answer that Ms. McLemore has put into all of the Kahoots is Mr. Wiedemann is bald. That's been the number one wrong answer to basically every question is Mr. Wiedemann is bald. Although some of the kids' favorite ones, even though they know it's wrong. Another really cool thing, walking around the building these last couple of weeks, and you know, our kids are old. You know, our kids are, you know, they're getting to be a young adult, and in the halls, you know, they have access to their phones, and every once in a while, you see this amazing smile go on a kid's face when they're on their phone and change a class, and you figure out what's going on is they're getting accepted to college. We've had a lot of kids come up to me, hey, I got in, and or they had this like, run and rush down the hall because, hey, I got into school. And I remember one of our students that Miss McLemore and I were out in the hall, and she ran up and said, I got in. She got into Penn State, my alma mater. So it was really kind of cool to see that happening. And kids coming into the building or coming into the main office, say, hey, I got in. So it's that time of year, and it's fun to see that. And our kids, it's really cool to celebrate that. Spring sports start April 5th. So I can't believe our spring season is almost upon us. It is nice outside, but there still is that white stuff around. So hopefully we can keep our fields clear. I was talking with Mrs. Bride and Kim Maneri just yesterday that I remember last April we had a big snowstorm that almost created a snow day. And I remember my girls doing a snowman in the yard in April like 15th or something. So hopefully that keeps off and we can keep our fields snow free so our kids can get outside and participate in spring sports. Another really cool thing is next Wednesday, let me give you a little background on this. Because of COVID, a lot of SAT testing sites shut down in the last summer and in the fall and early winter, just because they didn't want kids in their building and coming together as groups, whatever. So we were lucky enough to nail down a Mill River only SAT exam for our students, and that's next Wednesday. It's happening in school, so our kids are going to be coming in, and it's only Mill River kids, and we have them spread out in the various gyms and what have you, so they're safe and they're socially distanced. And but it's Mill River kids only, so that's something we were able to provide for our kids, and it's really a nice thing. As a couple other principals mentioned, the UVM support staff and teacher of the year, we lucky have 2 at Mill River. Our support staff member of the year is Tim Parent. I'm actually going to bring him to a board meeting in the near future to talk about his sugaring house project, which is awesome. I wish he could go into our wood shop right now. We've got almost the entire building of a sugar house assembled, and it's all compartmentalized. So it's meant to be taken apart, and you can take it outside, and they're going to put together, and it's going to go out near our garden pretty soon. But so it's going to be moving outside soon, and they're going to put it together. So Ms. McLemore was lucky enough to get a grant for that project so that we could fund it and make it exactly what it's going to be. So Tim will come in at one point here and talk to you guys about that project. It's awesome. Ways before it's doing for our kids. And then our teacher of the year is Karen McCullough, who has kept us all completely sane during COVID and kept our tech spot on. That's been very helpful for us and really helped a lot of our teachers get through COVID and get through our remote learning and give them some new tricks for their toolbox. So that's really a good thing to hear. And then also scheduling, believe it or not, we're doing a little bit different scheduling this year for next year. We're going to do that during the month of May, so we have the most up-to-date information on how our kids are doing, and we can be as most specific with their class choices. So that's coming up pretty soon. We're going to be developing that schedule, or that class schedule, then to put out with teacher recommendations and what have you. And another thing that I want to kind of tease out there, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going a little long, but is graduation. I want you to know that Mill River administration and central office staff are working on contingencies for graduation. So we are looking at seeing what kind of ceremony we can do, given social distancing requirements and what have you. But we are actively working on that, and we will have plans in the very near future of what that's going to look like. Just so you know, we've gone from completely traditional ceremonies that we've had in the past. I have all the chairs and the stage ordered and ready to go for us, to something a little more restrictive, depending on, again, safety and health guidelines. So we are working on that, and again, look for some more information about that in the coming weeks. So with that, any questions on anything?
No, I guess not. Thank you, Tyler. That was
Thank you very much.
Very informative. We can move on to central office reports. Dave, do you want to lead off, or?
Yeah, you bet. Happy to. Thank you, Adrian. A few things to share with you tonight. Obviously, I have my written report. If anybody has any questions about that, happy to respond to those. But first, I want to build on something Tyler said, and it's important that I be the bearer of bad news on this particular one. One question that's bubbling up this time of year is prom. What happens with things like prom? Need to let you know that there are no plans in the works for a prom to occur at this point in time. I've spoken to all of the surrounding superintendents in Bennington and Rutland County to survey their plans, and I've heard the exact same thing. Primary reason for that is the guidelines from the state don't allow us to do that type of activity. We're not allowed to gather that many people in a place. We're not allowed to organize the venues that would be required for that type of thing. It's an unfortunate loss, but thankfully, as Tyler mentioned, graduation is very clearly on the horizon in some way, shape, and form that will hopefully feel at least more normal than last year's graduation did. And our folks are going to do the best they can to organize that in a safe and productive way. Also want to touch on you heard about the Teacher of the Year and Support Staff of the Year recognition. So I just want to build some context around that for you. First of all, those designations usually don't occur at this time of year. Under normal circumstances, those decisions get made at the end of the school year. We announce them at the open of a school year on our opening day in services when we have all the staff together. And UVM has historically done a Teacher of the Year recognition program that's an in-person large activity that usually occurs in October or November. That's under normal circumstances. Because of COVID in 2020, the spring piece didn't happen, the fall together piece didn't happen, the UVM piece didn't happen. But UVM has had this date that's been out there in April as a possibility that we knew may end up happening, and there will in fact be a UVM Teacher of the Year recognition program in early April. It'll be virtual, not in person. But in order to prepare for that, our folks needed to go through the process that we normally go through to nominate and select those individuals. Just so you know, we have a nomination window where support staff members and teachers nominate their peers. There are certain criteria that they're supposed to address in those nominations, and those nominations are all accumulated. And then we have it's publicly anonymous. Obviously, the people who participate know who they are, but we have an anonymous group of teachers and support staff that get together to review all of the nominations, review all of the criteria that are submitted, and then make decisions identifying 2 Teachers of the Year, one from Mill River and one from the elementary level, and 2 support staff members of the year, one from Mill River and one from the elementary level. So just to repeat, our support staff folks, Jane Campbell from Wallingford, Tim Parent from Mill River, and our 2 teachers. Awesome coincidence, but I think it actually speaks to the type of work they do and the quality and timeliness of their work. 2 librarians, so Karen McCullough from Mill River and Joe Bertoloni from Clarendon. So really excited to be able to recognize those folks. And I do expect we'll have another round of that, as we approach the end of this year to get ready for the fall, hoping that, we're maybe in a more normal scenario and those recognitions can occur in a more timely fashion. But definitely excited for those folks. A few other things I wanted to mention, heard some questions in public comment related to just curriculum instruction, what kids are learning in school. And my hope is with our principals reports tonight that you're getting a decent flavor of what our kids are doing and what they're learning in schools. I would encourage anyone that has questions about curriculum design, our proficiencies, and actually, all the way down to how lessons are delivered, there's a few people that are really good to touch base with, depending on what you're interested in finding out. If you want the big picture, 30,000 foot view on how proficiencies are designed, how we take the Common Core state standards, how we take the information from the state and have to organize our curriculum. Andrew Jones, our curriculum director. Andrew, if you don't mind giving a wave of the hand. That's his wheelhouse. He's a doctor for a reason in that regard, and he can talk circles around all of us as it relates to that. I'll also say that each of our principals is pretty darn skilled at knowing what's going on in their buildings across the levels and how that learning and instruction is organized. And I would, of course, encourage folks to actually talk to classroom teachers. If you want to know what's going on in classrooms, the best people to talk to are the people in the classroom. So don't hesitate as board members or even as parents to reach out to those classroom teachers and just make those connections to build a deeper understanding. We are more than happy to accommodate that. Also want to talk about April. I mentioned this in my written report to the board. You know, if we are watching the signals coming from Montpelier, I would suggest that we are seeing the governor attempting to remove the barriers that have been preventing 5 days a week instruction at Mill River for us. Those barriers very specifically have been the 6 foot distancing requirement, which is what keeps us in the hybrid mode, and then concerns about vaccine and you know, the safety of being in a school environment for school staff and students. As you know, the vaccine barriers are tumbling down and progress is being made in that regard. We've got about 200-ish day-to-day employees, all in with substitutes and coaches and everybody else. We had about 250 eligible folks, and we had 194 people access appointments for the vaccine on the first day that we were eligible for it. So really good participation, really good involvement. And keep in mind, some of those other folks have accessed it through different venues, through the Walgreens options, or, you know, due to their own medical dynamics or possibly age band, you know, may have accessed it on their own through the medical center. But, you know, we're seeing pressure and intention pointing towards April as a possible expectation to bring students back for more days in person. I want you to know that our Mill River team is working on designing what would that look like if we get there. And my intention is, once we have those plans solidified, I do intend to seek feedback from our parent community and also talk to our faculty and staff community and see where people are with, okay, if everybody comes back 5 days, this is what it will look like, or we could continue doing what we're doing to get to the end of the year and just finish out the home stretch. As I've said in my message to you, as well as to our families, I would have no intention, regardless of outcome, of requiring our remote families by choice to return in person during the remainder of this school year. But I also very firmly believe that the possibility of a remote option in the fall is incredibly slim or close to zero. So just want to get it out there that that's not something that we're likely to see. Final piece I want to talk about is we talked about George earlier. I would like to just address George Ambrose's board spot and just talk publicly about that process a little bit, just so that we have that on the record. On the 12th of March, which was George's resignation date, the school district sent a communication to the select board, officially notifying the Clarendon Select Board of the vacancy and requesting that the select board send its written feedback and consultation to the school board by Friday, April 2nd, to prepare for the school board members making an appointment of some sort on Wednesday, April 7th. There's a shared commitment that any letters of interest that the school district receives for the position will be shared with the select board. And I believe that Adrian has talked to the select board chair about a similar transaction the other way, that, you know, we'll make each of the entities aware of who's expressed interest. And it won't surprise you, you know, people will probably express interest to both entities just to cover their bases. I'm not sure of the Clarendon Select Board's intentions with advertising. I believe they may do that by their own means, but we have advertised in the Rutland Herald as well as on Front Porch Forum, and we'll be running those ads a little bit more. And then ultimately for the board, I would anticipate that it would make sense. You may end up deciding to do some sort of a forum or interview in a public setting with the interested candidates, you know, an opportunity for the board to talk to the people who've actually expressed the interest, to do that live where people can see it, and do that prior to the board meeting on the 7th when you would appoint. I do want to stress that we have a 30-day window from the date of the vacancy for you to make that appointment. And again, the vacancy happened on the 12th. So doing the appointment on the 7th makes sense, and that's within that window. But that would potentially mean, if you don't mind marking your calendars, probably sometime on the 5th or 6th would be the logical sweet spots for the board getting together with possible candidates to have some conversations. So I just want to get those on your calendar radar, so to speak. With that, I will gladly be quiet and take any questions, or pass on to, can't pass to Brian because he's otherwise disposed, but pass on to whomever Adrian would like to go to next.
Doing that. Are there any questions for Dave? Okay, Coral, you want to come up next?
Sure, thanks, Adrian. So it, won't surprise folks, but in the special ed realm, we've been very, very busy. Normally in a pre-COVID, typical school year, February to April tends to be very, very busy in the special ed world. And probably the largest reason for that is just that this is what I kind of call evaluation season. This is sort of the typical time of the school year when we start to receive an increasing volume of requests to evaluate kids for lots of different reasons. So I would say that this year is definitely not unusual in that respect. But obviously it won't surprise you that with COVID and the, pretty drastic amount of time that kids were out of school or away from traditional schooling, there are concerns for their learning, their growth, their progress, and that kind of thing. So we are very, very busy this year conducting evaluations. So moving right along in that arena. The other thing that's been interesting and this year, I guess, is that starting to get a handle on some of the little kids that are out there that are going to be. So this is about the time of the year that my partner at Children's Innovation is an organization that we partner with in the state. Sorry, I was getting the wave. I didn't know what's happening there.
Coral, you're breaking up. I'm not quite sure. Maybe take off your video so that we can understand you, because we've missed a little bit of what you said. Maybe the last 2 or 3 sentences.
Is that any better now? Does it sound quality any better?
I'm not sure what it is. Can we come back to you? Maybe wiggle all your cables and do all those technical things, right, Brian? Or BJ, sorry. Brian's not here. Andrew, would you like to take over, and we'll hope that Coral's.
Yep, sounds good. All right, well, good evening, everyone. And once again, welcome to all the new board members. So recently, the Agency of Education has released the details for what they're calling education recovery planning. And so they have some very specific timelines and lots of documents that Brian and I have been poring over to make sure that we are doing everything that the agency is asking. Right now, the main focus is looking at and collecting data to kind of get a sense of where students are at in kind of 3 main realms that have been set up by the Agency of Education. Those 3 areas are academic success, social emotional learning, and kind of well-being, and then also truancy / engagement. And so we'll be looking at kind of collecting some interim data on those things, kind of get a general sense of where our own students are at. And then from there to start developing a plan for not just next year, but really upcoming years, because this recovery effort, it's not something that is just going to be in the short term. We really need to look at this over the long term. And so there'll be some, extra supports we'll be putting in initially, particularly with the funds we'll be getting through the various grants and, money that's been coming from the federal government that can help with the recovery planning efforts. But, when we look at some of our academic success and achievement pieces, a lot of that is just kind of re-engaging with work we've already done before, particularly in the realm of Act 173, which we've really just started scratching the surface on the implementation of that. And so a lot of the stuff that's already kind of been started, we can just re-engage with that because that will support our work moving forward. And so as we continue to develop this plan based on the timeline of the Agency of Education, Brian and I will certainly provide kind of updates on that. But right now we're in kind of the brainstorming phase of looking at, you know, what our specific needs are and kind of going from there. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
That was very informative. Thank you. I guess, Gary?
Good evening, everyone. I really don't have a lot to add to the written report, except to ask that the Buildings and Ground Committee members of the board realize that we are going to go over in quite detail some of the recent bids that we've received for the roofing project at Timoth Elementary School, some of the bids that we've received for new buses. We'll also be discussing other pricing that we're getting for vans and the reason we're getting pricing on vans associated with our current transportation needs and what we're kind of thinking about for the future. So our next meeting, for those of you, typically would be the first Tuesday of the month. So that would be, I believe, the 6th, just in time for getting together to possibly make some decisions so we can come to the board on the 7th for some recommendations associated with those bids. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, however, or we can discuss further at our next meeting.
It might actually be a good time to try and schedule that meeting if we're talking about interviewing possible new board member on the 5th and the 6th. Could I send? I'll have Dave. Would you send around maybe some kind of a poll to figure out when, just as an, you know, we can get that committee together?
You bet. We'll get B&G scheduled, and we'll coordinate the board candidate forum or whatever format that takes alongside that. No problem at all.
Okay. I know you need the advice, Gary. Do you have anything else, or does anyone have any questions for Gary? Okay, seeing none, Carrie, you are up.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. And I wanted to just join my colleagues in welcoming the new board members. If you ever have any questions about our after school and summer programs, feel free to reach out to me. Be glad to answer those. We're a little bit unique in terms of our system. We operate about a about $270,000 budget, maybe $280,000 this year, and only about 4% of that actually comes from the local school budget. 96% this year is grant funded through a number of different grants. So a little complex, but feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions on that. I provided you a report, but I want to emphasize just a couple points. After school's going really well. The weather changes are fabulous to get the kids outside a lot more and the staff outside a lot more. We did learn recently that we'll be losing our fabulous site coordinator from Shrewsbury this year at the end of the school year to a move out of state. Sarah Fry has just been a wonderful part of our team, actually from the time she was a teenager and volunteered with us. And Jody and I will work together to do our very best to replace her, which we won't maybe be able to completely, but we'll really try our best on that. So finally, just want to mention our primary focus right now is summer program. And I have to say, we just are so excited about this. Last year, we weren't able to provide a summer program because of COVID. And the year prior, we had a very limited summer program. We had a lot of work going on across the district in our buildings. And so we limited enrollment. So this year we're ready. And of course, the kids really need it badly and the families are looking forward to it. So we'll be running a 5-week program from the last week of June through the end of July this year. Tracy Tinsley, who's just a terrific leader of our Clarendon after school program, currently has been for several years, will be leading our summer program. And we are really gifted to be able to have a lot of teachers and paraeducators in our district. I'm sorry. I got that a little. I'm on short sleep today because of a move, in the midst of moving right now, literally. But anyway, we're very fortunate to have a number of teachers and paraeducators in our district working with summer. My colleagues throughout the state have very few teachers in their districts that actually are interested and willing to do after school and summer. They're burnt out. We have a number of them in ours, so we're really happy about that. And finally, we're actually going to be reducing our fees this summer for the summer program for families. Just made that decision today. So hopefully, we'll be able to improve access. We're looking at equity, of course, with that as well. So we're going to be dropping the fees this year, but having more in the way of enrichment programs, inviting more children to be a part of that. And we're really excited about it. So thank you for that.
Wow, thank you, Carrie.
Questions at all? Sure.
Anybody? That's all great news. I'm amazed. Len?
Yeah, just a question. Andrew mentioned it, I believe, and Carrie, you mentioned it in your written report, the SELPQA. I think I wrote that down right. Do we, is there a way, once that information is completed and put together, can the board see, I would like to ask that the board see that information.
Okay.
Excuse me, so that we get an idea of what's going on as well.
Okay, so just to clarify, Len, that actually is a tool that we only use, as far as I know, Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we only use that in the after school program. And we evaluate programmatically, we evaluate the quality and impact of social emotional learning and development using a based tool.
It's not something that we use, but Len, when we collect the data for the recovery planning, we can certainly share some of that stuff with the board for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just, the more information we can get as a board, I just think it's better off. And so I would appreciate, again, I know it's a process, and so I'm not in a big hurry, but I also know that it's something I'd like to see.
I could also, Len, on that, there's a lot of reporting I do at the federal level and also state level because of our grants. So I just kind of made a note at the end of the year, after the end of June, early July, I do the reporting. I'll give you a one-pager over the summer that can basically, in terms of my world anyway, after school and summer world, that can show you our both qualitative and quantitative data. I actually track, I'm going to just throw this in, I track data myself on top of what we're required to do. And one of the really interesting indicators is summer learning loss, which is, again, a national phenomenon whereby children that are from low income groups tend to lose over the course of the summer. And we actually have 9 years of data that shows that for students in our district that have participated in summer programs, there's a statistically significant decrease in their summer learning loss if they've attended at least 3 weeks of summer programming. And so the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do that, but certainly be happy to share that with you and do, again, just a summary so I don't bore you with all of the pages that all turns out to be in the end. But thanks for being interested in it.
No, that'd be great. And just so you know, I'm a big fan of summer programs, even at the high school level. So I think the more we can do with those kinds of things, the better off the kids are.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. That was a great question. Stan, I almost forgot you. It's your turn.
I think Liz wanted to ask a question first.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. Sorry, I had my hand up. Yeah, I just wanted to also raise up the after school and summer program. And Carrie, I will look forward to seeing your qualitative and quantitative report because I'm interested in knowing how many jobs this offers our community. I am a parent who utilized after school and summer program, and I have worked in the summer program and benefited as an employee. So I just want to raise that up. It's really a wonderful program. And I would like to share with everyone because I suspect you don't know, that Jennifer McLemore and I, years ago, worked in the summer program together in the Rutland City Public Schools. That was a long time ago, Ms. McLemore. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Liz. And we do have numbers in terms of the number of regular school day staff that we employ across the district, and it's significant. It's maybe 65 to 70 individuals a year altogether. So thanks for making that point. And thanks
Thank you
again
so
for your
much.
patience, all of you, with all of me for my not sleeping for the last 33 hours. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Sorry, Stan, you're back up.
Hi, everybody. I did not prepare a report for this board meeting due to time constraints, but I am planning on having a full report, financial report up to date. I hope to have that ready to send out to all board members on Friday, so that you'll have it in advance for our finance meeting on Monday evening. So you can be looking for that in your email on, sometime late Friday afternoon. You should be getting a report from me. Just an update on our financial audit for FY20. It is still going on. Last week we were still sending them information because we are doing it remotely. So we scanned, a few more 100 documents and sent that to them. We are getting near the end, but I would not expect to see a draft until probably sometime in early April. And I will just continue to keep you updated on the status of the FY20 audit. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Stan. Does anyone have any questions for Stan? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to
Adrian, can we go back to Coral to see if her?
Oh, Coral. I'm sorry. Yes. How's your mic doing, Coral?
I don't know. Let's find out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I don't hear any of the crickle crackle either. Great.
This has been happening, and so this reminds me. So Mr. Hill was supposed to fix this for me, and I forgot, and so now I don't know when I'll see him again. So, but he is off celebrating something far greater than fixing my microphone, so I'll just let him be. I was actually almost done. I just was going to say that just the last thing kind of keeping the wheels turning in special ed right now is that we're learning about pre-K age children who will be coming into our school district in the fall. And so we're doing some advanced thinking and planning about how to meet the needs that we're learning about that are out there. So I just find that really enjoyable because the kids are so darn cute and they're so little. They're like little babies. And it's just enjoyable because you meet a lot of moms and dads and caregivers who are like super nervous and, they've never done this before. They've never sent a child off to school. So it's just kind of neat to learn about their kids and to be in a position of being able to reassure them, like, we're going to take really good care of these little ones. So anyway, so that's kind of taken off as well. So yeah, that's what we're up to in special ed. So sorry for the mic disruption.
No, thank you. And I'm glad we got to hear about the little kids. That does sound very sweet.
Yeah.
Did anyone have anything that they wanted to ask Coral from what she said now or before we move on? Okay, I don't see anything. I guess we've moved on to plan recommendation for board district goals review. And Dave, I will let you deal with that.
Yeah, actually, Adrian, if you don't mind, I think we jumped something, which is, no, we are on the board goals. I was
the agenda.
I was all excited about doing a technology bid because I've never gotten to do that before, but we'll do the board district goals piece first. If you will bear with me momentarily, board members, I shared this Google Doc with you right before the board meeting, and I'm going to share my screen momentarily. If you will permit me a moment. Okay, my hope is that you are able to see something that says goals review proposal. And it looks like a memo, so to speak. Are we all on the same page? Everybody looking at that? Cool. So board members, just some background for you. In our current board and district goals, we have plans for October and April updates. Because of COVID-related things, we delayed the October one to November last year. April is coming up, but also Len and I've had some good conversations about just, making sure that we are strategically navigating goals revisions if necessary and having the conversations to make sure that our goals are accurate and what we think that they should be. So what I have for you tonight here is just a proposal. This is not listed as an action item on the agenda. I'm essentially just looking for feedback along the lines of, does this make sense, or is there something that you think might be better tweaked, etc. To go over this just piece by piece, my proposal would be to provide what would have been an April goals update to the board on June 16th at that regularly scheduled PD slot from 6 to 7 that occurs before the board meeting at 7. The reason for this actually is the way the assessments are falling out in terms of having the data available. We know that our Star 360 data, which is a part of our board goals, that window closes June 5th, so we know we can have that turned around and have that data ready to share by the 16th. And additionally, you know, graduation data. Graduation date slips my mind, but it's always the second Wednesday in June for us, and we'll have those numbers firm and solid. So that would be the reason for that proposal there. Then going further, as we get into July, especially for our new board members, you know, the board meeting at the beginning of the month always falls around the 4th. That's kind of how things shake out. However, this year it falls on the 7th, which is a few days later. Which I think gives us a little bit of elbow room to work with. So my proposal would be that we actually hold a regular meeting as would be scheduled on the 7th. And then we can use the 21st for another purpose, which I propose in number 3, which is predicated on hoping that we will see some flexibility on in-person gathering expectations. You know, we're hearing the governor talking about a back to normal by July 4th. I think that's optimistic, but I feel like being optimistic in that regard. For this type of work, talking about goals, talking about strategy, and honestly, for some of us, meeting each other in person for the first time, having an in-person kind of retreat type of activity where we discuss the current status of the goals and look ahead and start to project things out. You know, that seems like a good mid-July timeframe and type of activity. And then use that window, if you look at number 4, use the window from mid-July to the beginning of August just for the internal work that I would need to do with my team to make sure that we were pulling the data we needed to get goals updated and revised. And then, as you see, number 5, I would present updated goals for feedback during our regular public meeting on August 4th. And then conceivably, if all proceeded as designed, a couple weeks later, we could approve those updated goals, and that would still be a couple weeks prior to the school year starting. So you get the concept. We want to hit the data when we have it. We want to have a strategic process. Love to do some work in person, hoping that we can get ourselves back together in person during the summer and still have everything lined up for the start of the upcoming school year. So I would love to take any questions or comments you may have on that, or if it looks good, say, yeah, Dave, sounds good, let's go. Adrian, I'll defer back to you.
Okay, does anybody have anything that they would like to either ask or comment on? Len, I see your hand.
Thanks. I just really think that this is important for us in terms of moving forward and looking at the education of our students. And if you remember when we first did these goals, we did it in a retreat sort of setting where there was a lot of give and take and back and forth. And I really hope, even if we can't do it in person, that folks take a look at the goals, because David sent them out the other day, the ones that we have at this point, and take a look at those and think about where we want to go moving forward. And I think it's important that all the board members participate in that process. And I think David's schedule allows that to take place. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Dave, one question I have, is there a place that the public can go to view this document if they're interested?
Yes, I don't have the link right in front of me, but it is actually on our website in some capacity, so I can make sure that we get that link included in the minutes so that it's readily accessible. And I'm pretty sure you can find it through our main page, but we'll make sure that it's visible from the main page as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody. Thank you very much. Now you get to do the technology bit.
All right, now I get to pretend I'm a technologist, right, BJ? So in Brian's absence, the agenda is not helping me here. I should probably pull up the right thing before I get cocky. So Brian has developed a bid asking for action. You know, the gist of this is technology and computers were very limited in availability during the COVID timeframe. So we are both trying to catch up from that, as well as order some machines that would be a part of our regularly scheduled process. So you as the board, hopefully in the board materials, you saw the comparison of the bids. We had a bid from Acture Solutions for 120 computers and licenses totaling $34,110. Bid from CDW for the same number of computers and licenses, $37,677.60. And bid from Connection Business Solutions for 120 computers, 120 licenses, $39,788.40. Brian's recommendation is that we make the purchase at the lowest price from Acture Solutions. His words, to take advantage of their superior pricing. So the request is that the board make a motion to approve the purchase of 120 computers and 120 licenses from Acture Solutions for a total of $34,110.
Actually, David, may I ask a question first?
You might be asking the wrong guy, but go for it.
Actually, I think Stan's going to be able to answer this one. Knowing that there still might be supply issues, can we approve the Acture bid, but allow for CDW to come in and fulfill any computers that we could not get through Acture if there is any more supply issues? Does that make sense?
Here, are you asking whether it's a legal thing if we approve this bid to then get them somewhere else? I'm not sure.
More along the lines, like, can we have a backup plan, saying, yes, try and get them through Acture, but if there are supply issues, you are allowed to also pull those from CDW, not to exceed whatever the CDW bid is. Is that a okay thing to do?
I'm not sure.
I'm just looking at, I know the supply issues, and we're talking about 120 computers at a really good price from a company I've never heard of.
Yep. You can go ahead and propose that motion. And what I will do is contact somebody at AOE as to whether or not that is a proper way of doing things. I mean, they do have something with the federal grants on supply issues, but you have to request a waiver for that. So that might be the same kind of situation, is that we would request a waiver from the AOE to proceed with that type of transaction. If it occurs.
I just don't want any more holdup since this is already a month behind because of that issue.
Right.
So Stan, just for clarity, would your recommendation be make the motion, approve the motion on the Acture purchase for that price, and then a second motion if there are any supply issues with the first vendor to utilize the next best price vendor, CDW, to fill any voids, and have that be a separate motion that you could then look into? Is that the gist?
That's the gist, yes. Whoops. Yeah. I thought I was muted.
So moved.
Okay. So BJ has moved to buy the Acture, or to accept the Acture bid for this motion. Is that correct, BJ? Okay.
Yes.
Is there a second? Liz Phil Scott seconded. Is there discussion? Any other questions or comments on this? We'll get to the next motion next. Okay, seeing nobody's hand, would you raise your hand if you approve this motion? Okay, are there any nays? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, that motion passed. BJ, would you like to do the second motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that due to any supply issues that Acture may have, that we can fulfill that using CDW.
Okay, BJ made the motion, Liz seconded. Is there any further discussion or commentary? Okay, then I will call the question. Who is in favor? Please raise your hand. Is that unanimous? Doug, I can't see you. Oh no, you're on here twice, Doug. One is just a picture. So
am I that important to be twice?
I guess you are. So
I'll take that.
Okay, but either way, you're in favor. Okay, is there anybody opposed? No. Then that motion passed unless there's any abstentions. I didn't see anybody left. Okay. So Brian has approval and a backup, which is pretty cool. Thanks, BJ. That was a great idea. Okay, we'll look at committee reports. Personnel, Len. I'm assuming you are chair because I missed the beginning of the meeting.
Yes, we did a reorganization and somehow I ended up as chair again. We met on March 10th and we have 4 contracts that we'd like to bring to the board for action. So I'll move that we provide a contract, approve a contract for Kevin St. Ange, 1.0 full-time equivalency as a school counselor at Mill River.
Would you like to do these separately?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Doug, seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing nobody's hand. Would you please say aye or raise your hand to approve? Liz, your camera's off, so I can't see your vote. If you could maybe unmute and give your... Okay, well, maybe she's had to step away. Are there any nays? Abstentions? No. Okay, so Mr. St. Ange, congratulations.
Excellent. Next, I would like to move that the board approve a contract for Jillian Getman, 1.0 full-time equivalency, English language arts at Mill River.
Okay, is there a second? Thanks, Maria. Is there any discussion? No. Raise hands or say aye to approve. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any nays? Abstentions? I guess congratulations then to Ms. Getman. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Getman, okay, thank you.
Next, I'd like to move that the board approve a contract for Mike Gijanto, 1.0, and I apologize if I messed that up, 1.0 full-time equivalency, support staff, special education para-educator at Clarendon Elementary School.
Okay, do I have a second? Thank you, Matt. Okay. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, please raise your hand or say aye for approval. Okay, thank you. Are there any nays? No. I don't see things well enough to just assume that it's unanimous. I'm sorry. Are there abstentions? No. Okay, thank you, Mike, because I can't repeat the last name. I didn't hear it well enough.
And lastly, I move that we approve a letter of employment for Tammy Engelhart, 1.0 full-time equivalency as a long-term substitute art teacher at Shrewsbury, Tinmouth, and Wallingford.
Okay, do we have a second? BJ, thank you. Sorry, Doug. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please raise your hand or say aye to approve. Thank you. Thank you. Bruce, I didn't see, did you raise your hand? Bruce? Sorry, I didn't see that. Are there any nays? Any abstentions? Well, congratulations, Tammy. Thank you.
And those were all replacement that will, for the most part, go through the end of this school year. They're starting March 22nd, April 5th, March 22nd, March 18th. So they're starting at various times, each of those individuals. But basically, for the most part, it's through the end of the school year. Is that right, David? Is that a fair? Okay. And then there's postings that are going out soon. There are many. And third grade teacher at Wallingford Elementary School, school counselor, elementary school counselor, Mill River school counselor, English language arts teacher at Mill River, pre-K coordinator, arts coordinator, a reading interventionist, a math interventionist, and a special educator at Mill River. So those are all in the works based on the passing of the budget, as well as some resignations and other pieces as well. So that's a lot that's sort of going out right now. And then we are still looking for bus drivers, special ed paraeducator, and 2 special educators, and a long-term sub. So our next meeting is April 7th at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Len. It does sound like there's a lot of people, and I know a fair number of those, the new hires that are going to be coming on are budgetary additions, which is great. Policy. DJ.
I'm still chair.
That's what I thought.
I think we had a great meeting. We're going to be starting our review process and the next meetings coming up, where we're basically have a timeline and going to try and always keep 3 policies in the bank that we're kind of looking at it at once. So I'm looking forward to that. I do have a motion to make, so I'm going to motion to approve the policy F24 elementary program enrollment policy, which was warned for first reading last week.
Okay. Liz, was that you seconding?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question or two.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I looked up the law because, I had a question last week or 2 weeks ago about the deadline, May 15th deadline for people coming through. And that's okay. But I looked up the law and it said, tell me how you came out this, I don't know. It said pre-K programs serving, the state law says every child who is 3, 4, or 5 years of age and not enrolled in kindergarten, blah, blah, blah. And we left out 5 on our policy. So it's not in line with state policy, unless there's something I don't know.
Dave, would you like to address that?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is we have a 3-year-old program and we have a 4-year-old program. We do not have a separate 5-year-old program. So if there were a 5-year-old that were engaged in pre-K, and sometimes they may start as a 4-year-old and then they turn 5 during the course of the year, they're still under the umbrella of the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old program because our 5-year-old program is kindergarten.
Does that answer your question?
Well, it answers the question, but it doesn't stay in line with the law. So the second thing, and this would answer my question from 2 weeks ago, according to what I read, that if somebody moves in, as we did in Shrewsbury, we moved in on the end of January, June 30th, and if the programs had been filled, our boys would have been just out of luck. But according to this program, the state law, unless they've changed it since 14, then the district is responsible for funding those people, those children who are left out of the district. You can fund them at another school in the district, but if they're all full, you need to look elsewhere for them or a private program. But I think that should be in here.
Bruce, that is Act 166, and you are correct. We are responsible for providing access to pre-K funding for up to 10 hours per week for 3, 4, and potentially 5-year-old children. So as you said, in a scenario where our programs may be full, keep in mind, we're not required to provide pre-K. We decided as a district that we believed in pre-K and wanted to provide it to the fullest extent possible. But if our programs are full, so for example, let's say Shrewsbury were full and a family were seeking that, our first option would be to say we do have spots available in these other schools. And if there were no spots available there, we do have the obligation to send funding to the approved pre-K program. Not every pre-K program is approved by the state, but the approved pre-K program of their choice. And we have those agreements in place and we do follow the law. I think it's important to note that in our policy committee, which you are a member of, we work hard to not spell out policies that say we will follow the law. We have policies that describe how we navigate our responsibilities, and in addition to that, we follow the law.
My only concern was the fact that that's a pretty big part that was left out, that you will be taken care of if you don't get into the district. Like if I had a 3-year-old in Wallingford and it was filled, there are other options out there. And ultimately, it would be that we paid for a certified place to go if there were one open in Wallingford. So I think that just causes people to question what's going on. That's all I'm saying. By omitting those things.
Yeah, Bruce, actually, I'll respond because I remember asking this question when I first started, and a lot of it had to do with the laws changing and our policies not. And that is an issue that I know I'm conscious of when we're writing policies, that we don't want to, if we reference something and that changes, then we might be out of compliance, or our policy might be out of compliance. So I know as we're going through the policy committees, that's something we need to think about and make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's one of the reasons why we might not, as David kind of put it, we might not say we follow the law, but we try and do our own, it's not our own interpretations. That's a bad wording, but that was one of the things that came up when I first started.
I mean, BJ, sort of what you're saying is we're silent, but yes, the assumption is that we always follow the law.
Yeah. Well, we have to.
The best reference I could make there is, so currently the pre-K legislation is Act 166. Let's imagine a scenario where we adopt a policy and we say we're going to follow Act 166, which is referenced in the policy that's in front of you tonight. But if and when the state law changes and all of a sudden that becomes Act 42, as an example, that puts that into effect, then in theory, policy change needs to occur in order to follow suit with that. And of course, that can be a part of our regular policy review process that BJ mentioned a little bit earlier on. But I would again suggest 2 things to the board tonight. One is this policy as written is remarkably more detailed than what was in place, which was nothing. And secondly, if it is the board's wish to send this back to the committee for the committee to continue to work on, that is absolutely an option. But I would suggest that this is a time-sensitive one. We talked about this on February 25th because we wanted to get this lined up and in place before registration season starts full bore. So there is some timing dynamic involved that we need to pay attention to, whatever decision you may make tonight.
Okay.
Maria,
do you have something? Sorry, thanks, BJ. Go ahead.
She's trying.
Oh, okay.
Didn't want to jump over. And I apologize I wasn't able to make it to the meeting last week, but I feel like when I was on policy before, we often had discussions about what was policy and what was procedure. And sometimes we were like, okay, we're going to take procedure out of the policy. Procedure is what we find in the handbook. And sometimes there's procedure in policy and sometimes there isn't. It just, I don't know if that's and that's where it looks like, it sounds like we're going with that. But also, as I was reading through it, it did seem like the last couple points on each of these things that are about the basis of placement and enrollment, those are procedure and not basis for placement and enrollment. Like 7 and 8 on the first one, and 3 and 4 on the second one, and 4 and 5 on the next one. And I don't know if that's quibbling. But, and then also Bruce's point, is that procedure or is that policy? I'm not sure.
I don't know if people feel strongly enough to have BJ withdraw his position. It might be easiest to just vote this and see whether it passes. If it does, then these questions can be addressed by the policy committee for ongoing work. If that is everyone's desire, I will call the question if there's no other comments, and we'll proceed that way. Okay, I guess the question is called. Please raise your hand if you are in favor of adopting this policy tonight. Dave, are you keeping track of the numbers? Please keep your hands up. I am a yes.
Give me a moment, Adrian. I see Adrian, yes. Liz, yes. BJ, yes. Asha, yes. Matt, yes. Doug, yes. Maria, yes. And Sam, yes. So I see 8 yeses.
Okay, could we have votes no, please?
I see Len as a no and Bruce as a no.
Okay.
And the only reason I'm voting no is because I really think it should go back to the committee so we can re-examine it. I don't mean to disparage the work that we've done on the policy committee, but that's why I'm voting no. I wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Len. I think the numbers have passed. And BJ, I would suggest that we have this conversation in greater detail in the next policy committee meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe not on this particular policy, although that. But.
So maybe not wait the 3 years, David, on this one. We'll review it sooner.
Right.
And
just
less time where it's less under a time crunch.
I was thinking more in terms of how we're going to address this in future, whether we're going to stay silent and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, we've switched the date that we normally have our policy committee meetings. And we are now going to do it. No, do we have a special one? We're going to do it right in front of the Community Engagement Committee, which is the second Tuesday of the month. And we're going to do it right beforehand. So at 5:30. I think it's going to be our regular times now. And we did that because we had several members who were also a member of the Community Engagement Committee. So we wanted those back to back.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's what reorganization is all about. Change things up. Negotiations is next. And the negotiation committee had a meeting. And to my embarrassment, we didn't actually have a reorganization. We sort of talked about what had happened in the last year because we have 3 members and 2 of them are new. So it was more of an update on how things are going. And then we did also make a determination that we're going to meet with the support staff negotiating group just to go over the custodian pay scale, because there seemed to be ongoing conversation and it became clear that perhaps there was not really an understanding on both sides how things were going to be handled. So we are going to have a conversation with them, and we will bring you whatever the result of that conversation is to vote. We're not obviously going to act on our own, but we will bring that to you either next meeting or the meeting after, because we're going to try and deal with it quickly. Other than that, we are still in ongoing, we still don't have a contract for the teachers, but we're working through the issues. Hopefully. That's all we have. Buildings and grounds. I don't know exactly. They haven't had a meeting, so I suppose Gary's already given us the deal, and Dave is going to schedule the meeting, so we'll skip them for right now. Community engagement. Maria.
Hello again. I'm back. So we had a meeting on the 9th, and we had public input, and it was all helpful. We talked again about the role of the Community Engagement Committee as opposed to the role of the community conversations. The committee is actually helping the board to improve and expand their engagement, and the conversations are a way that we're doing that. So we welcome public input to our meetings with suggestions on how we can better do that, and participation in our discussions about that. So we had a good meeting. We talked about taking advantage of local events to keep board members more visible and more available and accessible. We also planned for the next community conversation to be taking place on Monday, March 22nd at 6:30 p.m., which is soon. So what I would like now is a couple of volunteers from the board to join Asha at that meeting. Is there anyone who is available at 6:30 on Monday to talk with whoever should show up and answer questions about things that people don't understand or things people would like to know more about, direct them to resources if we aren't the best people to ask those questions of. Really sort of take the discussion wherever it goes. We do have a kind of a set structure that those conversations take. We have introductions, we collect what the questions are, we answer them, and then at the very end we have a quick check-in to see how it went and if people have suggestions about how we can do it better. So we will not be recording them, but we will be taking notes and we will be sharing those on a document that you should have access to soon. And I apologize it's not there yet, but we're going to be gathering the subjects that we're talking about on a document with an index. And so that if you're like, what about this preschool thing? I don't really understand how it works. Other people have asked that question. You can, look up preschool, go to that part and be like, oh, this is the question that was asked, but wait, I have more questions. I want to go to the next conversation. They've been great so far. We had 2 a month we scheduled 2 a month in January and February. We're going to be going back to 1 a month now, unless there's huge participation, in which case we'll expand because it's a great opportunity to talk to people. And let me know if I'm freezing up because suddenly everybody just turned into circles on my screen. So is there any, I can't see you. So if you would like to take part in that, would you unmute and let me know? Otherwise, I will start bothering you tonight, everybody, until somebody volunteers.
Okay, do we have any volunteers? I can see most of you.
Oh, thanks, Adrian. It's a great opportunity.
Yep, so now you are setting Maria loose to hunt you down.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
It's great.
All right, thank you, Maria. Do you have, did you say the next community engagement meeting or just your group?
We have both. Thank you for reminding me. We have one. So the conversation is March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. And I will be also asking board members to announce that on your front porch forums as soon as possible. I'm going to write something up tonight and send it to mine. Ask you to send it to yours. So there's that. And I will share with you what I'm writing so you don't have to spend lots of time figuring out your words if you don't want to. The next actual meeting is going to be April 13th at 6:30. Hereafter, meetings will be at 6:30 p.m. on the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, we have finance.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, no? Can everybody hear me? Oh, sorry. I switched the page so I couldn't see you and you're all doing this. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we're all good. We can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We have the following pay orders and payroll for approval this evening. I will start with pay orders from the general fund. We have a pay order in the amount of $62,897.63. We have a pay order also from the general fund in the amount of $15,309.94. Also from the general fund, we have a pay order in the amount of $2,740. We have another pay order from the general fund in the amount of $17,019.38. From ASP, which is after school program, we have a pay order in the amount of $689.51. And we have a pay order from the food program in the amount of $44,148.55 for a grand total of $142,805.01. For payroll, we have payroll dated March 12th in the amount, this is regular payroll, in the amount of $571,800 $857.12. And we also have payroll dated March 16th in the amount of $4,582.67 for a grand total of $576,439.79. And I move that we approve and accept these pay orders, payroll as presented.
Do we have a second? Doug, seconded. Is there a discussion or questions? Doug, did you have a chance to review?
Oh, absolutely. Everything seemed to be sort of normal, not much of any changes, school stuff here and there. Being in the heating business, I circle that pretty much. I was impressed at the way the electricity still seems to be going down and down, thanks to solar stuff and the grants that we had to get that there. But what caught me a little bit on the scary part was delivery for 2 vehicles and the amount of 60 tons of wood chips. And I did the math out, and that averages out to, or it numbers out to 120,000 pounds of wood in that little steel thing with little small pebbles on the bottom. It's crazy stuff, but it seems to be working fine. Nothing else came up at all.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Liz or? No. Then can you have a show of hands, or can I have a show of hands, please, to approve these budgets? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess we are unanimous. Thank you.
And Adrian, our next meeting is on Monday, the 22nd at 4:30 p.m.
Thank you, Liz. So now we have the public complaint, and I will turn over the running of this meeting to Maria.
Thanks, Adrian.
Sure.
And since Dave was the one who received the complaint, I'm going to ask Dave to please read it.
Yes, you bet. Maria, if it's okay just to assist the board, I'd love to kind of frame the task in front of the board. Is that reasonable for me to do at this point in time?
Sure. Go ahead. Thanks,
all right. So just to give you a perspective overall, so we've received a public complaint. I'll read that to you in just a moment. Then I think it's appropriate to read for the board the policy involved that this complaint references, so that you're aware of what the actual policy calls for related to this. And then I have a suggestion as far as what, based on my interpretation of policy, your task in front of you this evening is, but I'll just share that suggestion and then turn it back to Maria and allow the board to do their thing. So received a complaint from community member Crystal Usher, dated March 3rd, 2021, sent to the members of the school board. Says, I'm writing this letter to file a formal complaint against Adrian Raymond regarding a recent social media post. Adrian publicly and specifically named members of our community who were running for school board positions in each of our 4 towns. She named Todd Fillmore, Bruce Morton, Julie Petrossi, Arn Majorel, and Matthew Gouchberg of, quote, running campaigns that have taken the low road to smear good people. They accuse current board members, myself included, of being dishonest and to have intentionally broken the laws of Vermont, end quotes. She goes on to say, quote, the board is not able to comment on this former employee because of his confidentiality rights, but I can and am writing to say without reservation that the information that has been circulated by these candidates is filled with exaggeration, partial truths, and outright lies, end quotes. As a public representative, I found her post incredibly inappropriate on many levels. Firstly, I have not been able to find a single record where a candidate named any board member in their campaign or accused anyone of being dishonest. I would add that her comment on the former employee suggests she is using information obtained as a board member to her personal gain regarding the school board campaign. Her comment could very well have compromised their campaigns and suggests a calculated effort to alter the outcome of 4 local elections. In reviewing the MRUUSD Policy B3, Board Member Conflict of Interest, as well as the VSBA Code of Ethics, it appears Adrian Raymond is in violation of this policy. I'm asking the board to review the actions of this board member. In my opinion, her comments are considered slander and a grossly hypocritical example of taking the low road to smear good people. then it's just, there's a link in the complaint to the policy B3 and a link to the Vermont School Boards Association Code of Ethics. And then Crystal closes by saying, I would appreciate a timely review and response in this matter. It is important that the board know that upon receipt of this, I did confirm with Crystal that it had been received, confirmed with Crystal that it would be shared with Adrian Raymond so that she was aware of the complaint and that the board would be taking it up, and that Crystal would be kept apprised of how that process played out. If it's okay, I'd like to, and this will take some time, but I'd like to just read the policy out loud so that we're all on the same page in terms of how and what you're discussing here. So policy B3, board member conflict of interest. This was warned and adopted in June of 2016. Members of the board recognize the ethical duty of all public officers to avoid conflicts of interest and to act in an ethical manner. Vermont statutes include a requirement that school boards adopt policies and procedures to avoid the appearance of conflicts of interest. In order to comply with obligations thus imposed, school board members should observe the following standards. There are 8 of them listed out. Number 1, board members will be familiar with the VSBA Code of Ethics and will observe its provisions. Number 2, board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of Vermont education laws which define school board powers and govern board member compensation and public bidding processes. Number 3, a board member will do nothing intended to give the false impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions or take action on behalf of the board or of the school administration. Number 4, a board member will not take any action which is intended to give the impression that he or she would represent special interests or partisan politics for personal gain. Number 5, a board member will not use his or her position on the board in any manner intended to unfairly promote a personal fiduciary interest or the fiduciary interest of family members, friends, or supporters. Number 6, a board member will not accept anything of value in return for taking particular positions on matters before the board. Number 7, a board member may not be employed by the school district during the board member's term of office. And number 8, a board member will do nothing intended to leave the impression that his or her position on any issue can be influenced by anything other than a fair presentation of all sides of the question. When a board member becomes aware of involvement in a conflict of interest as defined in state law or this policy, he or she will declare the nature and extent of the conflict or appearance of conflict for inclusion in the board minutes and will abstain from voting and participating in the discussion of the issue giving rise to the conflict. When a conflict of interest claim against a board member is brought to the board in writing and is signed by another board member or the public, and the board member against whom the claim is made does not concur that a conflict in fact exists, the following board procedures will be followed. Number 1, at the request of the remaining board members or upon the order of the chair, the board will hold an informal hearing on the conflict of interest claim, giving both the board member and the person bringing the claim an opportunity to be heard. Number 2, at the conclusion of the informal hearing, the remaining board members will determine by majority vote to take one of the following actions. The first action possible is issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is not supported by the evidence and is therefore dismissed. The second possible action is issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence and that the member should disqualify him or herself from voting or otherwise participating in the board deliberations or decision related to that issue as required by Vermont statute. Number 3 option is issue a public finding that the conflict of interest charge is supported by the evidence, and in addition to disqualifying him or herself from voting or otherwise participating in the board deliberations or decision, the board member should be formally censured or subjected to any other such action as may be allowed by law. And the final option for action is to take no action. That is the conclusion of that particular policy. I can share with you that a written response was received from Adrian Raymond stating, Dave and Maria, with Maria in her role as the vice chair, I have received the ethics complaint from Crystal Usher. I formally deny that I violated our conflict of interest policy or the VSBA policy on ethical board member behavior, and that is signed Adrian Raymond. My suggestion to the board tonight would be as follows. It appears based on the policy that the task in front of you first is to determine whether or not what's called an informal hearing in the policy is required. my recommendation would be that you, that under Maria's leadership as vice chair, decide what type of conversation you wish to have around that, and then make a decision around whether an informal hearing should be required. My further recommendation to you would be, if the board does decide that an informal hearing would be required, that hearing be scheduled for the next meeting of the board, to ensure that the person who, that Adrian, as the person who the complaint is about, is prepared for that, and that the person that the complaint was received from, Crystal Usher, is prepared for that as well. And then the board would lead an informal hearing that we would probably set up at the beginning of the board meeting, and then the board could make a determination at the conclusion of that hearing as to one of those 4 action options. So that's my recommendation in terms of process, which I think is important. And Maria, I defer to you, and I will step aside.
Okay, thanks, Dave, for going over all of that for us. Is there anyone who would like to make, so what we're going to do now is decide whether we're going to have an informal hearing and do whatever discussion is necessary. So is there anyone who'd like to make a motion that we do continue with a formal hearing about this issue?
I guess I'm going to speak up. I went through the VSBA Code of Ethics today, and one of the statements says that as board members, we will voice opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. Now, when
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but can we have a motion to do it or not? And
I'll make that motion.
Discussion? Is that all right? Would you like to make that motion? Okay, is there a second? Okay, Bruce. Okay. Thanks, Bruce. So now, Len, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to follow process.
No, you're fine, Maria, and I apologize for that. And the reason I'm making the motion, as I said, is because in reading the Code of Ethics, it says that board members will voice opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. I know in terms of the policy, there may not be a violation of the policy per se, but I do believe in terms of ethics, I have a concern with what took place.
Yeah.
Doug, go ahead. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I was saying something to my wife. Sorry. Look, while I'm here, yeah, I want to be a little careful because Adrian and I were both on the voting side of that, and it was very close. And I hate to say I'm after somebody just to get him kicked out and start over again. But I'm agreeing with Len from the VSBA situation. I think that's more adequate there. So I would vote for a informal hearing.
Thanks, Doug. Is there anyone else who would like to take part in this discussion? Okay. Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, I was one of the 5 that was spoken about, and I was a little upset. Now, we've got to go forward as a board, and I haven't heard from Adrian, and I haven't said anything to Adrian about it. But I did not lie or call anybody on the board, accuse them of lying about anything. So I was sort of sucked into that thing. And I just think, I think we've got to talk about the issue. So I'm for talking about the issue.
Thanks, Bruce. Does anybody else have a contribution to make? Nope. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead with a vote on whether we're going to take this to an informal hearing. So Dave, would you like to suggest?
Maria, just for clarity, could I recommend you do a roll call vote just so that we have a tidy sum of numbers?
Sure. I'm just going to go across my screen and call on you. So starting with Liz.
Okay, could you restate the question, please?
The question is whether we are going to take this complaint to the next level, which is carrying out an informal hearing and at this point, following Dave's recommendation, to have that on at the meeting on April 7th. So to give everybody time to prepare for that.
Okay, I don't feel we need an informal hearing to have this discussion, so my vote is no.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Bjorn?
God, this is hard. I think we need to have the discussion in a hearing, but I'm going to honestly say I don't believe anything was violated. I think this was just a frustrated social media post. But for due diligence, I think this does need to go at least one more level up.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a yes. Len?
Yes.
Thank you. Doug?
Yes.
Thank you. Sam?
I really echoed a lot of what Bjorn was saying. It's you know, the difference between the fact that we have to have, you know, rules to a discussion is always very jarring. And so is it possible? I'm really like, I mean, Bjorn, I really feel like a mirror when I was listening to you speak, because I feel that turmoil of, and also with Liz thinking, do we need a procedure to have the discussion? You know, I really am feeling both sides. That's what's in my brain. So I agree that it's definitely a discussion that needs to be had. I don't think it needs to be a formal hearing process. I would hope that we could come together through it. So no is my overall vote.
Okay. Asha?
Oh, I'm here. Thanks. Also really, really tough decision. I'd like to vote no. I'm voting no.
Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Bruce?
Yes, I believe Adrian spoke out of frustration, but she still spoke, and it still hurt people. So I think we need to have that meeting.
Okay. All right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Don't forget
okay.
you.
Right, I am going to step aside for this one as the moderator. So, because I'm also likely going to be moderating the next conversation about this. So we have 3 no's and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. So it looks like we will be moving on to an informal hearing at the next board meeting, and we'll be in touch to figure out how that is going to take place and what the process will be. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, so Maria, if you don't mind my thoughts just procedurally, first I'll make sure that I communicate directly with Crystal Usher, the issuer of the complaint, to let her know the outcome officially of the vote just now. Although I think Crystal's on the meeting, but Crystal, you'll still get direct communication from me, and then we will schedule that during our board meeting on the 7th, and we'll put that at the front end of the agenda, most likely after the public comment and those types of things have been completed. I'll make sure that we are aware of appropriate legal ground rules for what that should look like, and we'll proceed from there, if that makes sense to you, Maria.
That does make sense to me. Thank you all. I think I can hand it back to Adrian now, can I not?
You can. Thank you, Maria.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, can I just say one, I'm sorry, can
Absolutely.
I say one thing?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to apologize for the stretch where my camera was off. I was moving downstairs so that I could have better Wi-Fi so that I could see everybody's faces. So just to let you know, that was the reason for that.
Thank you. Okay, we will go to Transacting Other Legal Business, and I believe it is supposed to be labeled George Ambrose time, but nonetheless, do we have other legal business from anybody to transact? Okay, I guess not. Agenda building. I mean, we have a number of things already on. Does anybody have anything? Len, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm not sure. Moving forward, I think, and maybe that'll come about when we do the goals piece, but I would really like to see information from the elementary schools and the high school around attendance and who's in person and who's remote and how is that working. I mean, I think overall, I just would like to see some sort of accountability for where we're at this point.
Dave, was that, oh, hold on just a second, BJ. Is that something that you're prepared to do at the next meeting, or is that something we'd need to put off?
I think that would be best delayed a touch. You know, Tyler gave an update to that effect. It feels like it was yesterday. It was probably a couple months ago now at this point. But my theoretical would be, you know, as we're approaching the end of the school year, to have kind of a culminating update about how things wrapped up. That could make good sense. And to Len's point, that could tie in nicely with our goals, development, and revision, et cetera. If that is okay.
BJ, do you have something?
I was going to say, I really miss seeing the students. And, you know, if we could talk to the principals and get another quick presentation, even if it's on Google Meet, I really wouldn't mind seeing something again.
Okay, I think all the principals will take that in advice, and perhaps they can all.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the next one, but I miss that.
I understand. I mean, it's sort of why we're all sitting here, and we're not getting any of the fun out of it. Right? Anybody else for agenda building? Okay. Dave, you said that we needed an executive session. Do you expect us to take action afterwards, or should I excuse the public?
No, I think that's a great question. So yes, we need an executive session. I'll give you the reason in a moment, but for our viewing public, I expect there is a 0% chance that the board would come out and take any action after that other than adjourning. However, we will keep this meeting that we're all in right now will be open. I believe Ann Dages will still be lingering with this meeting, unfortunately for Ann. Board members, I have shared with you a separate meeting link for executive session if you can check your inboxes momentarily. And Adrian, what we need, we do not need a finding of substantial disadvantage, but we do need to enter executive session to discuss disciplinary or dismissal action against a public officer or employee if the board wishes. And I would appreciate if Tyler Wiedemann and Jennifer McLemore would be able to join us in that executive session.
Okay. So could I have a motion to enter executive session with the reason that Dave outlined? I'm not expecting anyone to answer that or repeat that.
So moved.
Okay, Liz, and then Sam seconded. Thank you.